Deputy Chief Torgerson, am I good to go? Okay, I see I am. Good afternoon, good morning. Today is Monday, October 24th, and this is the time and place for the scheduled Esports Technical Advisory Committee meeting. Deputy Chief Torgerson, has our agenda been posted in accordance with the open meeting law?
Yes, it has.
Today we'll be covering all items noted on our agenda. Deputy Chief Torgerson, let's proceed with public comments.
This item is placed on the agenda to give the public an opportunity to comment on ETAC related matters.
Let's start off in Las Vegas. Do we have anybody?
We have no one in Las Vegas. And it appears we have none in Carson either.
Okay, that will close our public comment section. Deputy Chief Torgerson, the next item on our agenda is the approval of the prior meeting's disposition and meeting minutes.
Pursuant to NRS 241.035, this item is the consideration of the approval of the Esports Technical Advisory Committee disposition and minutes for September 21st, 2022.
Thank you. Each of us has had the opportunity to review the dispositions and workshop meeting minutes. Would any of my colleagues care to make a motion?
Seth Shore for the record. I'll make a motion to approve the meetings and disposition from the workshop.
Thank you, Seth. Any discussion on the motion today? Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes and the disposition and minutes for September 21st, 2022 are approved. Deputy Chief Torgerson, please read in item number 3.
Item number 3 is discussion to formulate regulatory proposals related to ensuring the integrity of esports when wagers are placed on such competitions, and to recommend regulatory action to the Nevada Gaming Control Board.
This item was placed on the agenda for the committee to discuss possible regulatory proposals for drafting and the recommendation of regulatory action to the Nevada Gaming Control Board. At our last meeting, Senior Deputy Attorney General John McKayla presented a draft of potential regulatory changes to the committee. Based on the committee's discussion and motion, Mr. McKayla has updated the draft. I asked Mr. McKayla to present the updated draft to the committee. After Mr. McKayla's presentation, we will discuss recommending the draft to the board.
Thank you. And good morning, Chair Hamilton, members of the committee, Deputy Chief Torgerson. For the record, I am John McKayla with the Attorney General's Office. Before you today for possible recommendation to the Gaming Control Board is a potential new regulation governing esports. You considered a draft of these changes at your September 21st, 2022 meeting and asked me to make a few changes. These changes are reflected in the draft before you today dated October 10th, 2022. The biggest change shifts gaming licensee decisions to accept esports wagers from a per league basis to a per event basis. This change was based on the committee's discussion concerning amateur events with prizes sanctioned by esports leagues and the difficulty in defining esports leagues. In the proposed regulations before you, the concept of esports leagues is replaced with event organizers. The overarching intent of the potential changes is still to allow licensed books to accept wagers on esports events in the manner of traditional sporting events. Turning to the sections of the proposed regulation changes. The changes to Regulation 22.1201 make new Regulation 22.1202 the exclusive process a book must follow if it desires to accept wagers on esports. Proposed Regulation 22.1202 sets out the process for a book desiring to take wagers on esports. Subsection 1 reiterates the statutory definition of esports and that esports are regulated as other events. Subsection 2 defines event operator. Subsection 3 allows books to take wagers on esports outside of the current other event requirements, and similarly to how books accept wagers on traditional sporting events. This is allowed if a book satisfies the due diligence requirements of this subsection. This section was changed based on your comments at the last meeting to make a book decision on accepting wagers to be event-driven rather than league-driven. Subsection 4 sets out that books are required to maintain and update their records concerning their performance of the required due diligence. A book would also be required to notify the Gaming Control Board on a quarterly basis of the event operators for esports events on which the book accepts wagers. Subsection 5 authorizes the chair to prohibit books from accepting wagers on events conducted by certain event operators. This would allow the chair to shut down wagering on an esports event conducted by a certain event operator if an issue developed with the event operator. I again note that chair, as set out in Regulation 22, means the chair of the Gaming Control Board or the chair's designee. This subsection also allows an affected book to request review. Subsection 6 highlights that the chair may place an event operator on section 22.1201's list of sanctioning organizations. If the chair does so, book compliance with the due diligence requirements found in subsections 3 and 4 would not be required. However, as with traditional wagers on sporting events, books would still be required to monitor the integrity of the events on which they take wagers and follow other wagering requirements. These changes are before you today for your consideration of recommending them to the Gaming Control Board, and I am happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Michaela. I'd like to open this up to the committee for discussion. Does anyone have comment?
This is Judd Hanning for the record. Thank you very much, Mr. Michaela. I appreciate your efforts here, and I think the updates from our last discussion, which was lengthy here, have been made, and I do think that the outcome is sufficient from my perspective, from my concerns from the last meeting. So appreciate your efforts in making those updates, and it looks acceptable from my perspective.
Seth Stroh for the record. Yeah, I agree. This is great work. Thank you. And this question may be one directed towards my fellow members, since I was not at the September 20th meeting. In terms of item 6, where we discuss the chair placing an event operator on the list of sanctioning organizations, was there a discussion around that process, when that'll happen, if that's something this organization will take a proactive role in creating that list of sanctioning organizations?
Thank you, Member Shore. As I recall, that wasn't discussed, and I will defer to the members to correct me if I'm wrong. This would go with the current method in place for sanctioning organizations, which is a sanctioning organization can request to be placed on that list, or the board chair can simply decide to place, in this case, an event organizer on the list.
Seth Shore for the record. Maybe it's just want to put it on record that should these regulations be submitted and approved, an action item afterwards, potentially Q1 of next year, would be to have further discussion with the board and the chair around this specific item, making sure there is an efficient process and that this committee can continue to provide our experience to the board. As I personally think that's a very important part of these regulations. And I want to make sure there's an efficient way of creating this list.
This is Che Chow for the record. I want to agree with Mr. Shore's recommendation to follow up with a more detailed take on the regulation process. I do think that's at the crux of how we're going to be successful here with integrity.
This is Robbie Forbes for the record. I agree with those comments that we should give thought to a process by which this body can advise the chair on those esports organizations or events which would be on the list of sanctioning organizations. I think the same is true relative to item 5, the call item 5, the blacklist, so to speak. I think this body could also be helpful in evaluating that piece as well.
This is Brett Abarbanel for the record. I just wanted to confirm, I think this is the case, that the process for removing an event operator from a list of sanctioning organizations would simply follow as exists in other parts of the regulation, correct?
Yes, there are interlocutory orders for various other lists, and I think there are interlocutory orders for the list of sanctioning organizations as well, if memory serves. And there is also the same appeal process.
Okay, so we wouldn't need a specific one within these revisions?
For the appeal process or the interlocutory orders?
For both. I just wanted to confirm that that's elsewhere in the regulation. It didn't need to be present for these amendments that we're reviewing now.
I think it would be important to keep subsection 5 in this regulation because this specifically grants the chair authority with regard to the event operators. And we wouldn't want to default to anything else there. We would want to make it explicit that he
Yes, my apologies. I meant in addition to subsection 5, not to suggest to remove it.
Right. This would
Okay.
give the chair sufficient power.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Chair Hamilton for the record. Does anyone else want to have a discussion around anything else? Member Shore, just for your information, we had a lengthy discussion to say the least at the last one. So nothing wrong with you catching up. If there's anything else that you want to know from that, let us know. Otherwise, I'm good.
Seth Shore for the record. I think this committee has done a great job, and thank you, Chair Hamilton, for leading this committee. The fact that we're here in October, 9 or 10 months in, and I think have regulations in front of us that it sounds like we're all confident we could submit to the Gaming Control Board. I think that definitely checks the box for job number one. We have to have clear regulations. that said, I do see, quite a bit of follow-up and work that needs to be done. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. But I do hope that as a committee, we have an opportunity to discuss the next steps. Once we agree these regulations are the ones we want to recommend, and then of course wait to see how the board and the commission responds. But should the board and then the commission approve these regulations and they become official, I very much look forward to regrouping then and seeing how this committee can help the licensees and our industry take advantage of these regulations. My concern is creating regulations that aren't taken advantage of for any reason, while of course making sure that the burden and work does not fall upon the Gaming Control Board, which it has in the past. So I just want to make sure that's on record.
Chair Hamilton, for the record. Thank you, Member Shore. Okay.
This is Robbie Forbes for the record. If there are no further comments, I move to recommend the potential changes with the draft date of October 10th, 2022 to the Gaming Control Board for consideration of moving the potential changes towards adoption by the Nevada Gaming Commission.
Seth Shore, second.
All right. I think we've already discussed it, but I'll open the floor. Anyone have a comment on this? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you. Next on our agenda is my report as chair of the committee. I have nothing to report other than to thank Mr. Michaela and everyone involved in the process. All of you went above and beyond, and I just want to let you all know that I really, really appreciate it. Deputy Chief Torgerson, this brings us to our last agenda item, public comment.
This item is placed on the agenda to give the public an opportunity to comment on ETAC related matters.
Anyone wishing to make a public comment, please step forward to the podium. Let's start in Carson City. I don't see anyone in Carson City. Then Las Vegas is next. Thank you. That will close our public comment section. This concludes the Esports Technical Advisory Committee meeting. We are adjourned.